Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. My guest today is Vladimir Osipov. He is the co-founder of Lingolette. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me here.
So how did you get into developing apps for language learning?
Developing apps and language learning, these are like different stories for me. And developing an app for language learning is probably a third story. So I've been a software developer for like 25 years. So originally it was a hobby, one of the hobbies. Then eventually I turned it first into a job, to get this nice feeling in the morning when you don't have to wake up for a job anymore. You wake up for a hobby. It's a completely different feeling. And then
I've got a question there. Did the hobby, once you turned it into you said it started as a hobby, but then it turned into a career. Once it turned into a career, did you lose any of the satisfaction of the hobby, of having programming as a hobby?
No, I can't really say that, because I had different hobbies on the way. For example, I was really actively playing airsoft for like 15 years until COVID came, so it just stopped a few years ago. And in every hobby I had, everywhere I tried to use the software development skills. Eventually it was all web development, of course, in this or that way. Like, for example, when many years ago, when was it, like 15 years ago, I built like a portal dedicated to airsoft, which became extremely popular in Russia.
Nice.
Some days we had like more than 1,000 unique users. I'm not lying here, no, because we had lots of cool features there, like a radio station, like everything, like managing games, teams, blah blah blah. It was like a social network basically. But then I moved to another country, and I gradually everything slowed down, because it was for a specific market. Well, I don't want to say market, because it wasn't a business. It was just a hobby. But so I closed it like maybe a few years after, since it wasn't really maintained and developed anywhere. And then currently, for example, my hobby is flying, like being a pilot, flying an airplane. And I also...
Is that a Cessna, or is a Cessna? What are you flying?
In the terms, since probably most of the listeners will be from the US, in US, this is an equivalent of sport, I think it's sport pilot license called, or something like that. So it's not a private pilot. It's like an ultralight in Europe, but it's not an American ultralight. In America, in the US, I mean, it's a different license. It's a sport pilot license, I think.
And so, so
it's not Cessna. I'm sorry. I assumed everyone knows, but then so it's not Cessna. Cessna is PPL. It's like since it's a heavy airplane. Usually, sport airplanes are like two-seaters.
Oh, interesting. So how big is the plane that you're learning to ride on?
I've already learned. I'm actively flying. How big? I mean, like in kilograms or size-wise?
Oh, I don't know. Just
maximum takeoff weight. Usually in Europe, it's always limited by 600 kilograms. In Lithuania, where I currently reside, the regulation limits it to slightly lower number, 475, with a rescue system included. So it's but since it's built, with modern materials, and it's just a two-seater, it's more than enough. I mean, it's really lightweight. The only problem that since it's so lightweight, it's easily affected by by wind gusts. You can. It's called the vendor is called Bristol. You can search, since you're searching for it already, Bristol, and the model is NG5. That's the one I fly.
Okay, got it. Interesting.
Since I saw your screen, you were looking at airplanes. Yeah, I thought you wanted to search for it.
For my listeners, I'm pulling up an airplane here, and it's probably smaller than a Cessna.
It is definitely.
I imagine a Cessna is, and okay, so that's really cool. So now you've got this hobby of learning how to do airplanes. Are you going to build any apps based on that?
Well, I actually already built one related, but I used it more as an experiment to see what it can achieve from a site which is being run by AI only. I started this experiment like around a year ago. I don't remember. And the goal was to research, like, is it really possible to have a site that is, or some service? The service is pretty simple. It basically searches for ads, aviation ads, and tries to like analyze the content and build ads built on that. But usually in this area, in this niche of the market, all the ads are extremely crappily written. Like they're not selling at all. So it creates ads based on that. Like finds pictures, does some analysis. Like on the registration number, like some extra stuff. Basically combines a story on an airplane. That's what it does, and manages it obviously on different languages. Like the same ad is accessible. But the idea was to see if AI can do all the job and maintain it. And during the development, it was probably the first time I was very actively using AI. Was a better version of GitHub Copilot, I think, those days. And I saw what you can really achieve with that, because it's so faster, incredible. But that project is running like a funny experiment. I'm not doing anything with it.
Yeah. Okay. So you, as a programmer who early caught on to the ability of AI to do a lot of different things, I imagine that you also use it in your coding. Usually, it's really interesting. About 80% of the developers that I talk to still haven't used AI, mostly having to do with the kind of the experience saying, if it's not broken, why should I fix it? And so like a habit, basically, that they're just not even touching it because it doesn't do something in their heads. Well, I'd be curious to hear if you agree with that number of 80%, but also I want to go through and understand exactly how you're using it for AI for your programming, either in building using the API or in actually improving your coding or writing code for you, or in agents if you're starting to use them, if you're starting to deploy.
I'm using it daily, like all the time, and it's not only it's not limited to software development. It's mostly, of course, software development and run a business, where I use it. But there is like an unlimited capability, and people are afraid of losing their jobs. Let's say, I don't know, copywriters or whoever is the most affected, but in fact, they should not be afraid, or most of them should not be afraid of losing their jobs like designers. They should be afraid of not learning how to augment their job with AI, because then they will simply lose their job, not to AI, but to other people who have learned how to do that. That's as simple as that. And the same applies to developers, actually. I've heard rumors, again, I don't follow that much, that like big companies stopped hiring juniors or something like that. Again, maybe you heard those rumors. Because it's not like a massive, thing. It probably only applies to markets where juniors get hell of a lot from day one, which is most usually, I guess, the United States, where they get like $150 per year, 150. Well, hold on, how much? It's here salaries in Europe are in like per month, so I'm always confused trying to make sure that the number is correct when it's annual. 150,000.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, it's like I think people will lose their jobs only for software, but this might even be for everyone. People only lose their jobs if they don't use it, rather than if they do use it. If they do use it, they're definitely going to hold on to jobs longer than
Absolutely.
currently not using it, because there's so much utility to it. So how do you use it when making yourself a better programmer? Do you use it to generate tests? Do you use it to create tests, or sorry, to write code? How are you using it to write code?
Well, since it's built into my IDE, integrated development environment, don't think much unless I need to think. When I'm using it, it's this very nice. It's AI-based autocompletion becomes better and better and better, and since it indexes the whole code in the project, it knows what I need to do, and sometimes it feels even creepy, like how well it reads my mind. Like I understand, sure. I mean, it's the code is indexed. It knows what I'm building, but sometimes it feels a little bit creepy. Like you press enter, and then it just reads your mind and writes the code of a function you wanted to have, and like, okay, thank you, yeah, let's go continue.
But and are you using Cursor to do this, or are you using Copilot? What tool are you using?
I'm using Copilot. Currently there are several tools like that available, I think, but I'm stuck to Copilot because I mean it does everything what I need, and of course when dealing with something more complex rather than some contextual feeling or augmenting my thinking. Let's say I need to write a test, right? Then definitely I just say write a test, or actually if you create a test file, it usually sees that I need a test, but then it's not always relevant. So you need to explain, like, let's say let's write a test to cover this function and whatever. You need to add more details, basically. So that's or if I need some really tricky algorithm, or just a funny fact about myself. I'm originally a physicist. I'm not a mathematician, and I've studied physics. I had 2 master degrees. Again, fun fact, both in physics, because I wanted to be a physicist, 20 years ago, or 25 maybe. And my maths is quite weak, I would say. I remember when, well, of course it changed since then, but when I was applying to the university, there was a special, like a shortcut for pupils, or not for pupils, but yeah, but like for school teenagers, rather, to get to the university without an exam, if they would like pass, like it was called like an Olympiad. You write a series of not exams, but they're like very exams with very tricky questions. With like it's there was this aspect of competition as well, like that's why it's an Olympiad, but basically it was a series of exams on different areas of knowledge with really tricky questions. And since I was studying for a physicist, obviously there was physics and maths, and in order to pass to get basically free admission, and well, it's not just free education, you were also paid additionally. Like you're considered a smart kid. You had to get to earn some specific amount of points. And I barely passed. And do you know why? My physics was like, among all the applicants, I think I was like number 3 or something in the whole city. So my physics was 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 9, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, like 10. And my maths was like, 5, 6, 4. So my math, I definitely, and I didn't like, I never liked maths. That's the thing. So until AI came, algorithms was my weak point. I knew, of course, how to estimate complexity,
Wait,
but I never knew.
What's the relationship between math and algorithms?
Well, I guess this is more like a mathematical thing. For example, the guy with whom I've been building the previous business, and I'm building Lingolette, the co-founder. He is a mathematician. He can write algorithm. Like I just tell him the business task. Like we need to do this, and he's like, piece of cake. We should. And like, how the hell? And then sometimes he tries to explain me what he wrote, and like, No. I just, it works. It's covered with tests, so I trust you.
What was the problem? What was a recent problem that you had in relationship to algorithms, if you can share it?
I would gladly share. I just don't remember because this happens quite rarely, and it applies to some really tricky optimization. For example, something that we want to squeeze like a few dozens of percents in performance, and then I have no clue how to do it. Or some for example, he's really good at like hacking. He in a gray meaning of the word, not black, not white, but kind of so how to get
the result.
Not the result, but like, I don't want to say how to exploit the system because this word has a negative connotation, but how to get something that you're not expected to get as a user, but something that is like completely legal, this gray zone.
Yeah, interesting.
And this sometimes comes very handy when you need to achieve some task to test something really, because of course, and he always like pushes me to go for this in a business, but then I tell him, listen, in a business we can't do, in production we can't do this because it's like we just go and pay, and that's it. We don't run any shady schemes. But in like when testing, this is really handy because it saves time mostly, and his ability to reverse engineer systems to it's just a nice tool to have. And
would you say that in order for him to have that level of intelligence, like when it comes to these problems, I imagine that you're familiar with the autistic type of programmer vibe, right? Is he more in the sort of like Asperger's or autistic, like very neurodivergent?
In the beginning, he was like very... Yeah. Well, what if he listens to that and like, what the fuck? Am I autistic? Well, he is like more of an introvert person than me, although I consider myself an introvert as well. I'm not like for example, the girl who is doing guerrilla marketing and social media for us. She is very extrovert. Like she is, well. You can imagine how that is. Much more, proactive, really open. Sometimes I'm shy approaching people, especially when it comes to sales, because I think like some random guy is going to, sell you something. What would my reaction be? It would be completely negative. That must be the same, what other people would feel. So it hinders me a little bit. But yeah, to answer your question, he is more closed person. But it's probably always like that with mathematicians. I mean, there is nothing surprising.
Yeah. That's true. I love the example of the mathematician. I forget who he was, but I think he went to Caltech, and he took a lot of stimulants. And he said like, if I did not take these stimulants, you wouldn't get this math. So it's a funny story, but I can't remember who it is. If any of my listeners are listening to this and can remind me of who that mathematician was, let me know. So we got algorithm of business. No, we got there's algorithms. This point about math and algorithms is really interesting. I had never heard that before. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but because I've been listening to this podcast it's John Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series, 50 episodes on YouTube, and he talks about the difference between an algorithm and a heuristic. And he says algorithm is a way, well, I know what heuristic is. Heuristic is a way of getting you to your goal without knowing all the steps in between the goal and your heuristic. And an algorithm is trying to find certainty, and somehow it relates to Descartes, because Descartes developed a bunch of mathematics. I'm not sure quite the relationship between those two. Do you have anything interesting to say on that?
On Descartes or on heuristics? No. I mean, it's usually those like heuristics. It's a term that my co-founder uses often. I also know what it is, but if you would ask me, what the difference between algorithm and heuristics is, I would say, heuristics is just poorly written algorithm. It's like, you know, some algorithm just written on a like a napkin. You know, like a business plan of an algorithm, kind of.
Yeah. So this is funny because I think what John Vervaeke would say is that the reason why algorithms can't be used in some situations is because the world is too complex, and so to actually model the entire world, we would need to have a computer as large as the world in order to compute all the things necessary. And so, like, in some problems, algorithms are great, but in other problems, a heuristic is more advantageous. But we don't know as well. Like, we don't know which. Yeah, it's a great series if you're interested in it. It's like cognitive science and other things as well. If you have anything to respond on that, I can feel free.
No, not really. I mean, I have a bad habit of interrupting people. So if I had something, I would already do this.
So physics. I would like to go into physics. What did you study in physics?
Solid state electronics, basically, or like it's solid state physics in general, because before, you know, you start with electronics on the later years, it's solid state physics. And well, you may ask me, like, what part. Again, I haven't been into physics for many years, so I forgot all the terms, and I may be like lagging and thinking how this or that thing called. So let's not go into too much details, or maybe I can explain it with some.
The question I have is related to computing as well. So I've been doing this series on the early history of personal computing in the 1980s and the 1990s. I'm interviewing people who are foundational in that in the creating the personal computer industry in the 1980s. And something I learned from William Shockley long time ago, or I'm sorry, that happened a long time ago in the 1950s. He was the creator of the semiconductor, and solid state physics has something to do with the semiconductor, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not exclusively about semiconductors, because there are lots of phenomena in solid state that you can utilize and, well, exploit in this case. But it's primarily about semiconductors, of course, because we. I mean, I don't know percentage-wise, like, if we compare, for example, the solid state and the plasma or the gas, I don't know if there is any liquid state physics. Maybe there is, but it's probably tiny. So solid state is, well, at least it feels to me like it's 95% of this material, of physics dealing with materials, because you have other kinds of. But again, I mean, I'm absolutely not an expert. Far from that. Haven't touched the physics for how long? For many years. For like 15 years. So if I'm telling bullshit, if your listeners tell me, like, what is this guy saying?
They're used to plenty of bullshit, and trust me, most of the people aren't well versed enough in beliefs to understand that they should be questioning, it doesn't matter, because this show is all about speculation. None of my listeners, if they would have all canceled me a long time ago if they cared whether there's bullshit going on, because I provide plenty of it. Okay, well, let's go back to the language learning. Because I remember I unfortunately didn't get a chance to try it again before this interview, but when I first tried it, something rang about it being the best implementation of the API into another, basically a way to actually learn languages, because I use ChatGPT a lot for learning languages, and now translation as well. But it's not a good language learning app. Like, a chatbot isn't a great way to learn a language. So what do you guys do? What's the capabilities right now of the app?
All right, so maybe I should talk a little bit about how it all started with the app, with Lingolette. So my idea for a long time was to have some kind of machine that would be able to teach you, because I'm interested in languages. I speak several, some of them fluently, and I also that was kind of my dream, because I have a very interesting experience of learning language using only that language mostly. I learned two languages this way. One of the languages I learned in a structured way when the tuition, the instruction was done on the target language, and the other language I learned in a very funny way, only from, well, not funny, but weird rather. When I was living in Sweden, I was playing airsoft those days, still actively, in a team with lots of Polish-speaking people. And of course, in off-game conditions, like outside of the game, everyone spoke Swedish or English for those who couldn't. But in a game situation, in a stressful environment, no one ever thought about like how to say this in Swedish. No, they all used Polish. And since I already spoke like 3 languages till that moment, so I had some, language learning, not a skills, but some small advantage because I knew, how the languages work and so on. Also, Polish is relatively close to Russian. They are not mutually understandable at all, of course, but a lot of false friends, like translators, false friends. But it helped me. And, we were doing the thing we loved, like our hobby. Playing every weekend, or we were going to bigger games, to international games. And it snowballed. And in 2 years, we were, sitting around the fireplace after game in the woods and talking and, discussing the game in Polish. And suddenly one guy stopped me like, "Hey, hold on. Do you have relatives in Poland or what? Well, how come you speak so good Polish?" I'm like, "No, guys, I learned it only from you." Yeah. And unfortunately, it's partially gone, like this skill, because I'm not playing airsoft anymore. But I still, if I need to speak Polish right now, first of all, I will understand everything, and second, maybe after like 5 minutes of warm up, I will be back on track. Because it's those days I had a lot of lexics related to airsoft in my language. I wouldn't be able to discuss physics in Polish. But these days, most of my Polish lexics consist of cuisine or travel, because I live not far away from Poland, and we travel there sometimes, from time to time. And it's really cozy to come to a place and be able to speak language and to communicate with locals. It's really cool. Sorry.
So you're learning Polish and you've created this app, but I wanted to understand from...
Exactly. I realized that, I have this hobby of storytelling, and it led me somewhere far away from the main topic.
Already used to that.
Exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah. So what I wanted to bring this experience and share it with other people. And approximately at that time, the AI capabilities became so good, like so high, that it was possible, just to use it as some building blocks like Lego, and to build some prototype to start experimenting with. Of course, originally, when you just stick the regular large language model to voice input and voice output, you just get ChatGPT with voice and nothing else. So we started researching like how using the prompts and using different tricks, how we can get it close to the teaching experience. Also, one of the important points, and that's what we currently emphasize on the website that we recently redesigned. We didn't want to showcase any features there. We showcase the principles, the concepts. And one of them, for example, being that the content must be adapted to your interest and to your levels. Because if you are learning something that or trying to read or listen to something you don't understand, or something that you understand but is extremely boring, it doesn't work that well. Like getting back to my example with airsoft, sometimes if it's more than interesting but you don't understand it, you will get it there eventually. Of course, it's better that you would understand everything from scratch. And then there I tried to incorporate my experience of learning Swedish as a hobby years ago, when it wasn't talking about interesting things. I mean, it was a regular class, but it was done in Swedish. I learned Swedish using Swedish. Of course, you could ask questions, you could ask the teacher in Russian. It was those days I lived in Russia. And and even then she would try to explain it in very simple Swedish, and that helped a lot compared to my experience of learning Finnish, where the language of instruction was Russian, and despite my enormous interest in the language those days, in Finnish language, I mean, it wasn't that effective, I can say. So that's what we struggle right now. We want, like in our platform, there is the spoken part and the written part, and we want to bring them as close to the user's level as possible. With text, unfortunately, we understand that it is not achievable. You can't have A1 level text. I mean, you can, but it can't take, like, okay, maybe I have too much to explain, and not to confuse your listeners, maybe I should talk a little bit about how what the user flow is, user story on the platform. So yeah, in addition to the regular voice chat with a teacher, like an AI teacher, where you can't really discuss random things, because there is a little bit of structured approach, and the teacher will still always push you into this lesson flow of a chosen topic. So if you ask the teacher, can you write some binary sorting function in Python, it will tell you, no, I can't. We're here learning colors, or like weather. Whether in ChatGPT, if you do it, or in some other like chatbots like that, or even in some computer apps I've seen, you ask to write a program on Python, and it does so.
Okay, so you got a voice, and then you've got, and I'm actually signing up, or I'm logging on right now. So, and it based it on your interest. How do you find out what's interesting to people?
During onboarding phase, you are asked about your interests, and they're like just a fixed set of interests, and then there are sources that.
That was the Russian in the background was the app saying, "How are you?"
Exactly, and that voice. Since I'm rarely testing with Russian, that voice reminded me of some. If you think abstractly, it doesn't sound like a robot's voice at all. But this tone, because this voice is often used to vocalize, like to do a voiceover in different automated bots, it sounds like some. A bot, exactly. Although if you think of it, I mean, there is nothing bot-ish in it. So maybe I should choose another one.
And I'm sure you know about 11 Labs. Did you use 11 Labs for the voice?
I tried 11 Labs, indeed. 11 Labs are actually too costly, because they aim to serve companies that are mostly doing voiceover. And in our case, it's not like the voiceover that we do, because if you use, especially for popular languages, if you take like Microsoft voices, they're really good, or Google, which are a little bit less.
There was already a market for this before AI came around, and Google and Facebook covered that market of buying voices.
Exactly, and that is quite a cheap thing. I mean, it's almost a commodity to be enabled. However, 11 Labs, they develop their own tech, and their voices are really good, with different like styles. But Microsoft has styles nowadays as well, so you can choose like conversational style, or like even emotion. For some languages, I was testing Chinese recently. We don't have Chinese because of some technical limitations, but I was testing it a few days ago for our
technical limitations with Chinese. Is it?
It's not like, because we have a lot of tools, like context tools, that help you to, if you don't know something, or if you want to do something with input or output, there are different context tools helping with that, and they don't work well with Chinese. So we need to spend some time on development before we can get it. But there were even moods, so you can choose like an angry Chinese or like happy Chinese. And that's all provided by Microsoft. So these days it's rather a commodity.
Yeah.
And what was I talking about?
No, I got more questions. So,
yeah, go ahead.
So how does it? So you told me that it basically knows my interest by the original form that I think I probably filled out last time.
Yep.
And there's talking. So that's the main thing so far. And I'm actually going to share this with a friend of mine. We have an AI Whisperers group every Wednesday down here in Buenos Aires. And one of my friends was talking about language learning, particularly with voice. And so it sounds like you've got the voice component as well. Are you familiar with spaced repetition software, memorization software?
Yeah, like Anki or something like that. Yeah, sure, of course.
Do you use it at all?
We wanted to use it because we have as our like maybe I should. Okay, I'll super quickly cover like the second important part, which is the generation of adapted text. So you go when you subscribe to you can subscribe to different sources by interest, and every morning you get like texts which in my dream they would be adapted to your level, but right now unfortunately we can't achieve it. Like the only model that we tried that is somewhat close to achieving it was Google Gemini, but Google Gemini, you probably know all those memes about Google Gemini, and it's not about memes because we don't generate pictures with it. The problem that Google Gemini refuses to translate articles that it thinks are somehow politically incorrect, and it's wrong. I mean, it doesn't throw an error. It writes bullshit there, and programmatically it's not possible to detect. Because OpenAI, for example, or like Anthropic, it will translate the text because it doesn't care. I mean, the text could be whatever, some racist even. It will translate it. It'll do the job.
Do you think Do you think that happened with Google because of the system prompt? And for my listeners who don't understand, the system prompt is like the prompt in between your prompt and the LLM, which kind of directs the LLM.
What I heard, and again, I don't want to spread much rumors because I'm not. I mean, probably most of your users are close to the Silicon Valley and know all the details and rumors again. But what I heard is that they screwed up with the weights, so it's not like you can't fix it that easily.
Yeah.
Because the head of the development, he had some strange issues. But
yeah. No, I'm familiar with part of the story, and I like gearing it away from rumors. Okay, so I just subscribed to Science, Technology, and Fakorama, which are the few sources. Okay, and then I can add or the add sources feature is going to come around soon. Okay, and so then now I can go back to the read. Yeah, this is really simple. I really like how you designed it. And you said you have a designer. Is that designer responsible for the UI, or did you make a lot of these UI decisions?
Well, UI and UX are kind of separate things. So well, the majority of the stuff is designed by the designer, but since I don't want to bother him all the time, and also, I mean, I don't want to pay a lot until we get, properly monetized. I have a design guideline, sort of. So I design myself, and then I tell him, like, could you polish it, quickly? And then, well, he makes it look at least a little bit more pleasant, because everything that I design, I'm completely unskilled in design. Everything that I design myself looks like trash. I'm not a designer, absolutely. But so yeah, and like to get back to your question with repetition, everything that you like when you speak or when you type, if you don't want to speak, like when you're in the chat, or also when you encounter a new word and like edit the vocabulary in the texts, it is considered to be a part of your active vocabulary from that point of time, and then it's like a progress on it is tracked. That's the first thing. And second, you can instruct the system to switch the word into like an intensive learning mode, and then using a set of tricks, it's actually like injected, and it feels almost subconscious, injected into the content that you consume when talking to the AI bot. And we managed to do it quite like non-invasive. So unless it's a completely irrelevant topic, let's say an example that I tried. I put the word airplane, and the topic was weather. And yeah, the lesson started as normal, but then it asked me something like what if the weather, if the sky is clear or something, and then asked me like if I can see any airplane there. I mean, it's like it, because it knew that I need this word to practice this word, so it helped me to do so. And the goal is, of course, when we achieve the correct level, the complexity level adaptation for text, to inject the words into text as well. Mm-hmm. Because right now it makes little sense until it is well adapted. Because right now we can't get below maybe B1, and my goal is to get text at least on A2, because B1 it's
generating text. Generating
exactly, but when the texts are generated based on the sources.
This is gonna be a very specific question, but what when it's at B1 level versus when it's at A1 level, what is the difference in how it seems? Like, I imagine they're both readable. I guess it's the difference between GPT 3.5 and GPT 4.
No, none of the models can actually generate, can convert any random text to A1, because even a human being, like if you ask me to convert a random text to A1, it will be
you need both almost to be really, really good, almost native level speakers. So that's
even then you would have hard times, because you would have to find, like, it's difficult to explain complex things. Like if you are talking, like if you are getting, like, you subscribe on technology, right? It's not something simple, and sometimes it's literally a rocket science there. But then it's impossible to explain it with words, with a vocabulary of 100 words. It's not doable, and impossible for a neural network, impossible for a human. However, so what we want to do, and as like a shortcut, we want to eventually find a source of simple but still interesting texts, so that we could vary them, because making a simple text.
Why not children's books?
Because I mean, yeah, they're not interesting at all. I'm every evening I'm reading those fairy tales to my 4-year-old daughter, and I know them all by heart.
Okay, I want to amend that to young adult fiction. Young adult fiction is usually at a level that is somewhat interesting. So, like, an example would be Ender Scott Card's book, Ender's Game. Not Ender's. Ender's Game is a great example of that, which is very interesting, but at a young adult level.
Could be, but the point here is that the texts, they should be short and at the same time complete. So it cannot be a book, really, because what we noticed people do, they, instead of reading texts, they have this Instagram behavior, because we generate images on the topic of the article that you read. It's always pretty relevant, and instead of reading text, people just Instagramming there. They're like, nice picture, scrolling. Oh, nice picture. Yeah, nice picture. That's what they do, and we want them to learn language, not to look at pictures. But
how do you know what your users are doing? Do you use a cool tool to do that?
Yeah, we're just recording the activity to
recording. Okay, you do screen recordings. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not screen recording. It's more like the mouse the position. It's not a screen recording that you get in mobile apps, for example, when it's like literally video flow that is being recorded. It's mostly information about position of different elements. So that's why sometimes it's a little bit laggy. Sorry.
What's the name of that service or user testing?
It's WebVisor.
WebVisor.
Yeah.
WebVisor. Okay. Thank you.
Sometimes it's a little bit buggy because, again, it doesn't record the video. It records the position, and also it tries to, since we instructed the system to to hide some sensitive information before recording. It also affects some inputs, but overall it's quite clear, and we get quite a lot of information out of that. So our UX guy, who is also working pro bono, it's interesting for him. It's mostly his hobby. So he loves to do this UX analysis to see how people interact with the product, and run test. Like in his main job, he has access to focus groups, so he promised to us to focus groups, but we never got any focus groups from him. Well, he's not paid, so. And yeah, he can extract a lot of useful info and really nice insights that have already helped us to improve conversion, for example, in the onboarding flow. We had quite high bounce rate, but right now it's significantly lower.
Interesting. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, okay. So, and we got about 5 minutes left. This is a great app. I'm actually going to start using it. In Russian, when in order to change my keyboard, I have to go into the Mac settings and change it into the Russian Cyrillic in order to do it, right?
I mean, on your computer, yeah, probably. I'm not a Mac user, but here we have a like a helper tool, like input transliteration and output transliteration. And for Russian, it's actually enabled. It's also enabled right now, I think, for Korean and for Hebrew, because they use different scripts. So technically, you can write with Latin keyboard, and it will be almost correctly transliterated into Russian.
Oh, cool. But then I would be learning the like the pinyin of Russian, basically, which is never.
But if you want to learn how to speak, then that's the way to go. I mean, I, for example, some time ago wanted to learn Hebrew, but spoken Hebrew, because I don't need the written one much, and I relied a lot on this transliteration, not on Lingolette's transliteration, but I spent a lot of time speaking on it with a teacher on italki, and yeah, that works great. I mean, you can acquire language only like a specific part of a language if you need only that part, like speaking, for example.
No, this is great that there's an actual speaking one. I thought when I first tried it, I thought it was only a written one. And so I imagine that you're now using this product. And what languages are you learning?
Currently, I'm learning Lithuanian because I live in Lithuania. I should have started learning it, a few years ago, because I'm already living here for quite a while. But since I work mostly with people abroad and companies abroad, and when you don't communicate that much in the society you live in, and you mostly work with foreign companies, and English is your main language, and the business is done in Swedish, for example, working mostly with Swedish businesses, then you never have time to start. But a month ago, I forced myself. Okay, now it's time to start, and yeah, and it's going pretty well, because I mean I have heard the language a lot, so my passive vocabulary is very significant.
Is Lithuanian Slavic?
No, it's Baltic. It's not Slavic.
Baltic. Oh, interesting. And when you tried to learn Finnish, do you speak Finnish?
I hope I do. I mean, I haven't spoken it for like 10 years, but I think if I warm up maybe for a day, so if you put me in a room with a Finnish speaking person, I will be back on track in less than a day. I've noticed what is lost first is a nice pronunciation, because usually when I speak, I very quickly get rid of any accent, and if I don't speak that language, I acquire it back. And for example, I haven't spoken Swedish for like half a year maybe, and last week I needed to speak it, and it felt like I'm basically an immigrant in Sweden. It was of course after maybe like a 10 minutes of speaking, the accent went away, but it's always like that with languages. If you don't practice the skill is gone, and it's overlapped by something different.
So the accent specifically, it sounds like you can get rid of your native accent, and I can hear it in English. Your English is pretty good. When did you start learning English? What year?
When did I do this? I think I'm in school, in primary school, so when I was like 7 years maybe old. But again, well, when we all from school, we don't speak English. It's like, hello, my name is. That's what I get from school. So all the English is probably just from talking. I'm a chatterbox. I love chatting, talking, and this helps a lot with any language.
So very interesting. And but when you pick up a new language, do you have a specific method to get rid of the accent? Is there any?
I never focus on getting rid of the accent. It's probably, people say that I have this, not sure how it's called, musical hearing, like when when you can distinguish the tones and the sounds. And if I had some more time, I would definitely learn how to play piano, or at least I want to buy a synthesizer. Because I can easily pick the note, like on the keyboard. When I hear it, I know where to press. That's why, that somehow something clicks in the brain.
It's really interesting because the first language that I ever learned was Thai, and Thai has 4 tones, or 5, including the silent one. And that was one of the hardest thing. It took me months and months and months to distinguish the tone between ma, all those different like ways of saying things. It took me a really long time, and I wonder if that's. And now I can speak languages good enough that I want to remove the accent, for example, in Spanish. And I need to figure out how to do that, and I haven't ever
But by practice, basically, talk to native speakers.
I live in Buenos Aires and spoken Spanish for 10 years, so I've gotten. It feels like there's at a point that I need to actually focus on the accent in order to remove it.
Could be. By the way, in Lingolette, we have recently launched a feature that can analyze your pronunciation. It's only on for English right now. So if you're learning English, you can basically the article that you get, you can read out loud, and it will analyze and tell you what sounds are off, what you should work on a little bit, what is good, what is not. We will soon turn it on for other languages after testing. It's in public beta right now. But this is something that people really demanded. I don't know why. Again, it's hard to me to understand because when testing, I had really hard times. I tried to speak, I thought I was intentionally speaking with a heavy Russian accent, Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. And it still told me, yeah, okay, you got 85 points. Fuck's sake, how to get it to 50? I need to, to debug different levels. Yeah. And I couldn't do it. And but my co-founder, since he's not speaking English actively, he did it easily. He got oh, look, even if I speak normally, I already get 50%. So yeah, I probably understand why people need the feature, because they want to be understood better, and they want to sound closer to native speaker.
It's a great speaker. That's very important. One of my problems with Duolingo right now is Duolingo is the main way that I've learned most of my languages, just to get the base before going to the country to learn them in the country. And one of the main problems that Duolingo has is that its voice recognition is not good for helping me to improve how I sound in Russian. It's just a feature that they added that feels not really there yet, basically. Yeah. But
I think if you live together, in the society where people speak language, and you're the languages everywhere around you daily, then in my opinion, it should go pretty fast. Of course, maybe some little effort is required, to try to listen and hear the language.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. How can people find out more about Lingolette and maybe connect with you?
They can just go to lingolette.com or to our, LinkedIn page, but just go directly to the app and sign up and check it out. I'm always open for any feedback, business inquiries, whatever. Any ideas you have, any suggestions, open for any messages, basically.